What if I told you that there is a new way to communicate with your coworkers or your remote workers that's going to benefit collaboration? That's right. Most of the time, what do we all do? We force collaboration. We call a meeting that may be convenient for me, but maybe it's not convenient for everyone else. But we call those meetings. And a lot of times we're sitting in these meetings and it's wasting everyone's time, or we don't get what we want really accomplished because no one has the time to give thoughtful answers, thoughtful collaboration, because we're on a time schedule of the meeting has to end or we're into another meeting. And it's frustrating for everyone. Well, what if I told you there's a better way? Well, today's guest, Josh Little, has created his newest company called Volley. And that's exactly what he's done. He's created a new way to communicate through video to allow collaboration. Think of it as he said, Snapchat and Slack had a baby. Or what if it was a video version of a Google Doc where we all can collaborate at our own pace thoughtfully to help move projects along? As you can see, I'm pretty amped up about it because I am so excited about, one, the conversation we have, but also I really think he's onto something here for the future of working and collaborating as teams. So let's dive into today's episode of You're in Charge Conversations That Spark Change with Josh Little of Volley. All right. So Josh, let's dive right in. I've been excited to chat about you because your multiple companies are focused on technology to help the workplace, but especially it seems like we're at another cycle of this remote workforce where some companies are now deciding, do I bring people back? Do I leave them out? Where do we go from here? So for all of your interactions with businesses as remote teams, where are you seeing it work and where are you seeing the still stumbling blocks for managing remote workers?
Well, it's evolving every day, and that's the exciting thing. We're getting to see work kind of reinvent itself right before our eyes. And there's companies like Apple that are trying to figure out, how do we get, we went remote and now we bring our team back and we're saying we want to bring our team back in the office, and they're saying no. Okay, what do? We do this hybrid thing. Well, how does that even work? And who comes in the office, and how do we share it equitably, which is really exciting. But where we're seeing the most traction with Volley, at least, is with newer companies, with teams. I hear all the time of someone who's like, man, I tried to get Volley to work at my day job, but you know what? I'm using it for my side hustle, or I'm using it for this coaching group, or I'm using it. And so those are the folks that are figuring it out easier because they have a blank canvas. They don't have existing patterns of behavior that they have to change or reinvent. They can just create whatever is possible with the technology that exists today. And so that's kind of where we're excited to play.
So for those listeners who may not know, and we'll tie it all in the show notes as well, talk a little bit about Volley, because when I was looking at the tool, I saw so many possibilities, but also I could see how some people would look at it and may be confused about how to leverage it. So walk people through what Volley is, how it started, and where you see it as an asset for companies.
Sure. Yeah. Volley is a video messaging app. So think Snapchat and Slack had a baby. So it's instead of using a text box to communicate with your team, instead of typing at them all day like you do in Slack, you just send a video message. It's trading a text box for a record button. And you can still send text messages in Volley, but 76% of volleys sent are video volleys. And the reason teams and professionals use it is because you can speak 7 times faster than you can type, a written message, and you're going to edit it. So you can move faster, and then you can express all of the humanity, all of the empathy of your message. It's why we're not emailing this interview. It's why we're looking at each other face to face, is because you can feel my energy. I can feel yours. You can hear my tone of voice. You can see my body language. And that's 93% of the communication picture between those two. The words we choose to use, which are communicated in text, are only 7%. So it's just a way to communicate better increased connection, especially with a remote team. And a crowd pleaser is you can also reduce meetings with Volley, because a lot of the things you're doing synchronously don't really need to be done synchronously, but you do need to talk. And so Volley is a way to talk asynchronously.
So I love that concept, because I think we're all zoomed out, or it's harder to log into meetings. Like you were saying, we need to get everyone together. And even though someone might say, well, hey, listen, Josh, I can record a video on my phone and send it, it still seems cumbersome or not second nature. But when you, it's odd that, you know, when you have a tool or a piece of tech or an app like that, you'll use it more, because you default, like you were saying, yes, I could send a video, but I default to texting, where this is a real way for people to feel connected. And that's what I really liked about when I was on the website, was this idea of reconnecting to the people side, because we've been so disconnected over the last year and a half, locked in our homes. But even Zoom, it's not the same as a one-on-one message.
That's right. Yeah. And it's a subtle point that you bring up, but I think it's really important. If a text box is our primary input method, meaning like text messages, yes, you can send a video over text, but when do you ever do it? And how often do you get one, right? Yes, every messenger app allows you to record a video, but you just don't do it because there's a text box staring at you. It feels like it's the thing you should do. So in Volley, it's a record button. And there's a camera staring at you, and it feels like that's the thing you should do. So you do that. And when you do that, you kind of take the two biggest problems with remote work off of the table, which is lack of communication and loneliness. And both of those kind of fly out the door, because now we can connect in a way that we used to when we had proximity. When I used to lean over and say, hey, did you catch the game? Or, hey, I've been thinking about this. Or, you know what, I really could use some feedback here. Those little ad hoc interactions that now we have to schedule a Zoom call for, we just won't. And they're just gone. And those equaled relationship, those equaled trust. Those were the glue that bonded a team together, those little interactions. And so now we're trying to bring those back with Volley. And in order to bring those back, you have to kind of change the way you communicate. You've got to trade your text box for a record button. And that's why I think it's so important.
No, and that, I think, because, you know, is one of the biggest things my team, you know, we went remote last March 2020. We sent everyone home because we had to. And there are a lot of benefits to being remote or embracing remote workforce. We've been able to hire people in other states now that are very qualified, because we don't need them to come into an office in New Jersey. But the biggest, you just touched on, the biggest thing that most of our team misses is that ability to just lean over, ask something quick, versus, well, if I'm calling them, I'm bothering them. Or what if they don't pick up the phone? Or typing out what you want is a pain in the ass. Right. And like you said, if I wait till my scheduled meeting, it's not important anymore. I've moved past that, right? So the ability, I think that's really impactful for remote teams to really lean into that, and leaders of teams leaning into that. I think it's something we all took for granted, that everybody wanted their own space, everybody felt better at home, but that not big meetings. Like I said, that's why I really love this concept. It's the little quick interactions of, hey, got a question, and you hear and you see, and it feels like you're right next to them.
Exactly. Yeah. These little things, this constant syncing up or checking in or unblocking that we used to kind of do naturally is gone. And Simon Sinek just released a video where he said, you know, we're living on borrowed time here. Like, this is only working because we're living on the relationships that existed before we went remote. If we didn't know each other and we had to like get to know each other, it wouldn't work as well as it is. So there are shortcuts that we're living on, but we're all hiring new people. We're adding people to the team. We just did some research. 2,000 remote workers, only 4% said that they didn't struggle with remote onboarding. that was easy. 96% said that they had some sort of struggle with remote onboarding, which is just crazy. So that's why I think the teams that are picking up Volley and getting the most success are ones that the relationships are new. We're trying to get to know each other.
Right.
And that touch point or that proximity that we used to have just isn't there. And even better than where I used to lean over to my coworker and say, hey, what do you think about this? I am technically interrupting them,
yes.
And maybe they were writing the last line of the manifesto. Maybe they were just to figure out the problem that we had with that bug. And I said, hey, what do you think about this poster I just made? And there's such a value to deep work and being in flow. And so even better than the proximity, Volley lets you say what you need to say, move on with your day, and others can respond on their own time. So write the last line of the manifesto, stay in that state of flow for 20 minutes, whatever you need. I don't need an answer to most things in 20 minutes. Right. And if I do, I'm going to call you or we're going to jump on something synchronous.
Right. But see, I think that again, for remote workers, our team, and I can speak for mine, and I've talk to other business leaders, it is, I think this tool or this type of technology fits a nice space because we all are at home. We're all, in some cases, you could look at studies and they'll say that people are more productive because they have less interruptions. They have less commuting time, less, as you say, which we'll talk about in a minute, death by meetings, where I'm in meetings where I feel, why am I even in this meeting? But to your point is there's the fear of if I call, I'm interrupting. If I text, it sounds like it's important and I need something right now. But if you understand that, in this case, Volley, look at it at your own time, but it's still my energy, my personality. I'm connecting with you other than text. And same thing, even phone. And when we went remote, we started having people, do FaceTime for lunch, just to feel that they were a little bit connected.
Oh, yeah.
But I like this concept of this tool. So let me ask you then, so when you're talking with companies, and you mentioned early on, legacy companies, let's call them, people that have structures in place. What's their biggest hesitation for embracing this? Is it just another, why do we need it? It's an add-on, we're doing well. What's their pushback for embracing something like this?
Well, there are certainly a decent percentage of those companies that have a still an office presence or a proximity. Volley is just, it's not that great for someone who's in an office. It's really built for remote work. And that's where it shines, is helping connect and improve conversation that's happening remotely. So for that reason there, and there's just established patterns of behavior. And so, the older a company gets, the less, we're wearing the sweatshirt, like we're like really trying to do big things. I've worked at those, Fortune 500 companies, and we're there, we're showing up, we're working hard, but it's not the same as when we're trying to like lift something from the earth. Stakes are high. We're trying to do big things. Relationships are new. Therefore, connection is important. Every interaction counts. And if you're one of those sorts of teams, then Volley could be a solution for you. But if you're not, if whether we hit our goals or not doesn't really matter to you, then you're kind of apathetic on the way that we communicate. And actually, whatever's going to, bother me the least or cause me to stretch the least would be it. And so, to be honest, one of the things is camera, is seeing yourself on camera, like recording a video message. It's crazy. Even in Instagram stories and Snap and YouTube times, there are still people that have never made a video of themselves, that have never even like posted anything to YouTube. Right. And for people like you and me, it's like, what? Really? Yes. And so like 5% of our users are like, I feel weird. It feels like I'm talking to myself. And I'm like, yeah, it feels weird at first, but what you're going to fall in love with is the flexibility of this communication, because it's like the flexibility of Slack with the richness of Zoom. Right. And I can't imagine a future of work that we all want, that we all dream of, that's super flexible and balanced, being less comfortable with video and using that as a medium. So it's just something we're going to have to warm up to and become comfortable with. And so,
yeah, and I think to your point, I think we all have become more comfortable with Zoom. I mean, video, because we had to now. And what I also like about your comment there is you really do understand your audience, meaning who's going to benefit from this. I'm not going to fight with you and convince you if you have an office and this may not be work for you, because you can get up and go walk down and talk to somebody and you're in a building. But if you do have flexible pieces of your business where, you might have some teams remote, this could be an asset where they feel more included versus they're missing out on that, because that is still one of the things that I've read where, remote work is great, but there are some people that said, if I have a remote workforce and I have an inside workforce, the people in the building with the leaders 5 years, 7 years down the road may move up quicker in terms of their career, because it's just being around them to sense that energy where, if I now am embracing these videos or this style of communication, all of a sudden I get a sense of who you are, your passion versus just reading an email.
Yeah. And you see me wherever I am. And that's the beauty. I mean, the future of work is flexible. We're in different modalities throughout the day. Yes, I'm at home in my office, but I'm also walking the dog. I'm also at a coffee shop. I'm also at lunch. And with a tool like Volley, you get to see me in those environments, and you get to see me walking out of my garage and, I didn't know that you were into skiing, and those things just sort of come up. It's kind of a more real and authentic way to communicate. Even Zoom, which is video. Yes, I'm in my composed. Yes, there's a books. Yes, I've got a light on right there. That wasn't accidental. You've got Beatles posters behind you. That wasn't accidental. So we're in kind of our little stage here, but with Volley, you kind of can't not break through that. You get to see who they are. And when you watch a team on a Volley, like our team, Zach is volleying me about a Thai recipe he's working on lunch, and he knew I took a Thai cooking class, so I'm sharing recipes back with him, and he's, we're going on without our day, but we're connecting and talking about work as we go, just like we used to when we used to go to lunch together or talk to each other in the parking lot, or all of those things that connected us and really were the core of what built trust or relationship, right?
No, and I think what popped in my brain is we use FaceTime for those people that are really close to us, right? And so that I can turn around and say, "Oh, here's your grandson. Oh, there's the dog. Oh, where are you? Oh, I'm walking out. Oh, what are you doing right now? Oh, I see you're cooking. What are you cooking?" Right? So, like you said, it becomes, you're extending your circle of that, sharing who you are and more of you versus, as you said, the staged, here I am. And, that's the running joke of, people will have the suit on and they're wearing shorts underneath, like, because I only am zoomed from the neck up. But I think that's what I think this is key for businesses, is understanding how do you bring that humanity or shared humanity for your team when they're spread across the country, when they feel isolated. And to your point, so I think you said it was Simon Sinek. I think I don't think we understand yet how much being by ourselves is going to impact productivity down the road, because after a while, it's Groundhog's Day. I go from kitchen to the office, and I stay there and I come out, and there's no variation, right? It's another email, it's a text, there's no variation, where the idea of video communication is something new, something different. Oh, I see something in the background, very similar when you saw, my thing. And for those of you listening, I have Lego Beetle posters behind me. And so you see that, and that starts a conversation. So I think the key for all people running remote teams is really embracing, how do we connect humanity to each other, or else you're going to have burnout. I really think people hit walls really really quickly, where they just feel truly disconnected from the whatever you want to call it, the culture of your company.
Yeah, and I agree. The answer is video, but more importantly, it's asynchronous video, because this is video. What we're doing now, Zoom is video, but it's wildly interruptive. People who have been back-to-back Zooming for the last 18 months know it. It's just like, it's draining. And yeah, we could do Zoom happy hours or lunch hours, but that's kind of like forced fun. It by definition doesn't really work. And that's not how we built relationships before. It wasn't, hey, you didn't build your relationship in the team lunch we all went together. You built your relationship driving together to the team lunch, or these little interactions that you can't plan or can't stage that sort of happen naturally when it's asynchronous. And then maybe it's a nerdy point to make, but asynchronous means not at the same time, just like text messaging. That doesn't, when we're synchronous, like this Zoom call, I'm looking at you, you're looking at me while I say my words. And there are benefits to that. But the big benefit is when we can separate those by space and time, because I can ask you the question and you can think about your answer before you give it. And what educational research has shown us, that anytime you can wait at least 3 seconds before a question and a response is given, you come up with a fundamentally better response and answer in just a few seconds. But synchronous conversation requires a 200 millisecond gap. Like, you're listening to me, you don't know when I'm going to stop talking, but it's an awkwardly long pause if you wait 600 milliseconds, which is still less than 1 second, right, in between the turns in a conversation. Right. So therefore, and I know you do this as a podcast host, you're generating your next question or your next thought while I'm talking. So, and I'm doing it the same, right? Like I'm thinking about what I'm going to say to what you may be asking while we're doing it. But this is, the beauty of synchronicity is we can sort of feel each other's energy, but there's a lot of downsides to communicating in this way. And I, as a slow thinker and an introvert, I'm just terrible at thinking on the fly. I can't think of anything in a meeting. This is why I'm doing this podcasting thing. I'm trying to get better at interviews. And so a tool like Volley helps people like me who just need a second to gather my thoughts. And you know what? If I have 10 seconds, maybe 10 minutes to gather my thought, I'm going to think of a really good response. And you're going to appreciate it way better than if you got my crappy off the cuff, like, I don't know, Glenn's staring at me, so I better say something smart response, right?
All right, I'll wait my 3 seconds. No, but see, this is where, again, it's fascinating to hear you talk about this, because when I was researching Volley, I got it, but I didn't get it till now, because just what you just said, this idea of forced lunch, forced creativity, forced, like thinking to yourself, I'm going to sit down and write something creative right now. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Right. But to force that at a specific time all the time, schedule this, schedule our conversations. When I need you, you're not there. And I think that's, with this type of technology now, when I have a question, I can pose it in a thoughtful way. I can record it, send it to you, and then you'll get back to me. Right. And you'll be able to be thoughtful and think about this and have a conversation and respond back to me. It's that idea of forcing us without taking the time to be thoughtful. I mean, like that, now it finally clicked to me going, now I see the real power of this, because it's not quick text. It's not an email. It's, I hear it in your voice versus trying to interpret what I think you said. I mean, we all have had those emails of, that's not what I meant. Well, now I can hear it from you and see what's going on. And it's that the disconnect is the power. That's right. Is the power.
And this is so, help me with this, because this is so hard to get across quickly. Volley is a new way to communicate. We haven't had a truly new way in decades at work. Like Slack is just an evolved version of chat, which is an evolved version of email, which is an evolved version of letter writing, which is an evolved version of cave paintings, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's either I type or write asynchronously or I talk synchronously. And now Volley is in the middle. It's like, no, you can talk asynchronously. And that's a new thing because we are used to flipping between these modalities. Like, I'm either going to Slack message you or we need to talk. And inevitably, things will escalate and we all get the sense like, oh, we need to talk. And that's the moment that you schedule a meeting or you get in a room together. And that's why people's calendars are filled with endless appointments throughout the week is right. We have to talk. But now we give you a new way to talk. And that doesn't immediately click with most people. It's like, what? How is this better? And it takes a minute to kind of get in that box. So if you've got suggestions or if any of your listeners have suggestions on how to get someone there a lot quicker than 29 minutes, I'd love to hear it.
No, I just as I said, I think the beauty of this is having personal conversations at your own pace. You know what I'm saying? I think it's that idea of what you just said is even a phone call. I'm listening, but my mind is racing to what's going to be the next thing I'm going to say. And we're, tennis back and forth and back and forth, back and forth versus I'm going to give this to you in a more advanced way, meaning that I could type it or I could tell it to you. And even if I left it on a voicemail, that's still hearing, but seeing you locks it in. But it's that idea of you now can have all that richness of communication, but you have time to respond thoughtfully. And I think that to me is what, as I said, it clicked because it disconnects the speed at which I have to respond and I can be prepared. And I think ultimately it will save misunderstandings. It will save time, wasted time, like you said, wasted meetings, because now I have the ability to formulate what I want. And the only hurdle will be maybe my awkwardness of recording it, where someone might say, oh, I don't know how I look or how I sound. But that will I think you get past that pretty quickly because you see the results of what you're going to get.
That's right. And it sounds so much better when you say it than when I say it. But I think thoughtfully is an important piece. And we all want to put our best foot forward. And the other beauty is if something starts coming out the wrong way and I know it as it's coming out, it's like, I can say this better. Or I can cancel and just re-record it. Right. And it's not, the point there is not to obsess, but the point is like, put your best foot forward and be thoughtful. And how often have we gotten the email or the Slack message that somebody asks a question and to answer that question sufficiently, you're going to have to write a book. Like it's going to be a job and therefore you put it off and maybe you give a response, but it's not a full response. And you're just hoping that could maybe, but we're all elite athletes at this thing called communication, at talking. And we totally take it for granted. Even the least among us is an elite athlete at talking. And we're just so fast and we can communicate so much with this voice that we have and this face that we have. Why not use it? Why not let technology use this for all of the good with none of the bad? And that's what we're trying to do with Volley. Again, it's a new thing, hard to get, right?
Well, it's funny as you were saying that, and I was picturing how, let's say, I would use it. It just clicked in my brain that my two boys, I have a 14 and a 16-year-old, they FaceTime each other when they're calling. They'll FaceTime me. They're very comfortable. They don't want to type. The idea of typing a text or typing an email is ridiculous. But here's the funny thing is they'll text before they actually will call you. They'd rather FaceTime with you than talk on a phone, or they'll text you before they call. So I see this dynamic of this next generation of workers this is going to seem normal to them or more comfortable to them because that's the way they communicate with their friends. It's probably going to be the flip side of, why don't you have this? Why can't I communicate this way? Why do I have to type things when I could just volley them? Why do I have to I could just volley them? Like their brain. So I think it's more of, as you were saying, us, well, for me, older people who've been doing this for a while, business wise, it's how do I fit this into what is already existing, where they're looking at it as this is the way we always communicate.
Yeah. And this is what we hear from young people who are part of team, is like, this just feels natural. This is, of course, the way, my kids walk around, they're texting, but they're speaking into their phone. It's voice to text. Right. Yes, it's asynchronous, and they're hacking asynchronous using the voice to text feature. That's the idea. Yeah. Why are we typing with these tiny keyboards on a piece of glass with our thumbs? Like, is that really the most efficient way to? I am so terrible at texting with especially with these massive thumbs of mine. So, so it makes sense for me, a 40-year-old, but I think it does make even more sense for younger people who grew up, that are part of the Snapchat generation. Yeah,
no, I absolutely agree about that. So let's pivot a little bit. Outside of like Volley, you've been involved in other companies and providing tech and things like that. What I hear a lot of times from some business leaders is this idea of, well, I get technology, but it doesn't communicate with my other tech, or my team is afraid that the more tech I get, the less I'm going to need people. So my question to you is, as you've been in this space for a while, what is the role of technology? Is technology, are we building it to be more efficient, or are we building it to replace what? Because I'm hearing, fear from workers, especially older workers. This idea of technology is here to, push me out, and then I'm out of a job. So talk to me about tech, in your experience, your journey through this whole technological additions to businesses.
Well, if that was technology's job, it's doing a pretty poor job of it, given, the need for workers and the demand right now. Like, you can't even, many companies can't even fill their benches with the people that they want, if they could right now. So if that's technology, which I don't believe it is, I think technology just enables us to do more with less effort, with less input. That's hopefully what technology is doing. That's hopefully why we're building Volley, is to extend your abilities, to allow you to move work forward faster, to allow you to accomplish more in a given day. And that's hopefully all of the products that I've built. That's been their role, is to give you wings, so to speak. Should be technology now. So some tools are a chore to use, and they're not intuitive, and it does seem like you have a lot of logins, and it does seem, there are downsides to using more technology. But I just, the toothpaste is out of the tube here. The world's not going back in the box. It's not becoming less. We're not using technology less in the future that's moving ahead, in order to compete, in order to be a player in the marketplace of today and tomorrow. We're going to have to leverage technology to the best it can be. And this is, we look at tools like Slack and Zoom as great pioneers for us. They made a better version of what existed, but they're really just letting you do something digitally that you can already do in an analog fashion. It's letting us talk to each other from a different place, but in the same way. But what technology should really do is let you be better, like give you superpowers, let you, like with Volley, for example, have time to think before you respond, cancel that response, have total recall of the conversation. All of these things that we can't do synchronously. And yes, we can talk and have a conversation. We just take turns asynchronously, because we know the powers that will bring us. So hopefully the goal of technology is to make us better, which I think I've stated for the third time. So I'll stop.
That's okay. So part of this conversation, or this podcast, is to help people who are in charge of like either companies or teams or projects, right? So Talk to me a little bit about I mean, have you always been, it sounds like, you're in charge, you're leading this project here. If I go back and roll you back to ninth grade Josh, 10th grade Josh, all that up through, has this always been something that you've been involved with, meaning that you always were building, you were always collaborating with people or building teams, or was this something that you stumbled onto later in life?
Well, I'm kind of a reluctant leader. I've always said, man, if somebody else could be the CEO, I'd be really happy. I just want to, I love being creative. And
Right.
that's happened from an early age. I'm a musician, love to sing, love to create and just build beautiful things. Also tinker. I've got a YouTube channel of, projects that I'm building, and I have a hipster hobby business of making pickles. So I just like making things, making the world more beautiful. And I've done that from an early age, but I never wanted to be the leader, but always was the person that, like, if there was a group project in high school or college that was asked to present, like, Josh, you should tell them. And I don't know if it's just because I was a singer and a performer and, in theater and whatnot in high school, and that made me a little more confident in communicating than others, maybe gave me a slight edge. But wanting to be a member of the group, sure, I'll be the presenter. And that kind of just snowballed. I became a teacher, and a teacher is someone who definitely has to be in charge, right, in a classroom. And you realize if you're not in charge, those 11th graders are going to burn down the school like they did last year. So you've got to figure out how to keep them motivated and wanting to learn about American history and not thinking more about burning down the school again. Right. And that just continued into my corporate career in sales and leadership and then entrepreneurship. But yeah, if I would love someday to have someone who's actually a CEO who's actually good at this to run the company, if I could just evangelize and teach the world and do what I'm great at. But when you're in the early days, there's only a handful of you sitting around the table.
Absolutely.
Who's going to present? Well, Josh, hey, why don't you present? Right. So that's
so on that then. So if somebody's listening to this and they're in, doing like you're at, you got wearing a lot of hats. What's one or two tips to help or tools that you use to keep yourself organized? Because if you're wearing multiple hats, you have a lot of different things going on. People are always asking me, well, what's a good organizational tool? Or how do you keep track of everything? Or how do you do everything you do? What's one or two tips that you do to keep yourself organized, on task for all of your different projects?
Yeah, the tool set is pretty small, actually, for me. I mean, all of my communication flows through Volley. Like, even if somebody wants to schedule a call for me, no, we're gonna Volley. Like, I just don't have time for Synchronous anymore.
Right.
So that does take a lot off of my plate there. Like, just saying no, now this is super radical, I know, becoming 100% meatless, MEET less, right? That's something I've chosen for myself, other than podcasts and things that just require synchronicity.
Right.
But we use Trello heavily as a team, just keeping tasks organized. It's just a really easy board to organize tasks, and then Google Docs. And that's the stack. Like, everything flows through one of those three things. And because each use links heavily, you can drop links in Google, you can drop links in Volley, you can drop links in Trello, and vice versa. And so that's my little stack. That's how I stay. Those are the tools I use to stay organized, maybe not necessarily the principles, though.
No, but that's great. I mean, we've over time, rearranged different tech stacks, and we're just in a position now where we're streamlining or getting rid of some of these ones that have overlap, and we use ClickUp for tasks, but same thing, Google Docs, because everybody can go edit, versus Dropbox. Here's the file, and I have to download you new version, versus we can all just work on it. So I think the whole Google suite has allowed us, same thing, be able to be very collaborative without going back to, in a weird way, just like Volley, meaning I can go into a doc and leave my comments, and then someone else later on will go back in and look at there and they'll make their comments, and we don't have to waste each other's time to say, let's
Right.
get on a phone and let's chat and we can collaborate when we have time. So now, again, this is where the whole concept of Volley also is, we can collaborate, but it's, here's my next volley, right? Literally to you. And now I can go back and do what I'm doing until I get the volley back with your response. But it's, again, it's at each other's pace, so that we can collaborate. We can be present to collaborate fully and respond fully, because it has our full attention, right? That volley comes and I can look at full attention, versus when you're calling me, as you said before, I'm trying to finish this. Now I'm frustrated that you interrupted me. And now what do you want? What do you want? And even if I'm listening, my brain's disconnected, versus, all right, what Josh have to say? Okay, here's my response to you. And now it goes off. And I think that's where, I think that is really where collaboration and working is going to get to, is creating the tools and the technologies to collaborate at our own pace, versus that, as you said, forced meetings, forced collaboration at a specific time when maybe it's good for you, Josh, but it may not be good for me because my brain's not fully present, because I'm not giving myself over to this time because I got 80 other things going on in my brain.
I love that idea. It's kind of like Volley is the communication version of Google Docs, you know, that we're all adding to the pool of meaning, that we take turns, you know, just like actually the Beatles Lego posters behind you, you know, there's a bunch of different blocks that build this beautiful thing together. And isn't that what we're trying to do? And don't we all have something to contribute? And what if we leveled the playing field and allow everyone to add value to this conversation, this channel, this decision that needs to be made? When they're ready to add value in the way that they can add value, it is kind of trying to democratize communication in a way. But again, it sounds way better than when you say
no,
it.
but that I think, again, for what you just said, is I can collaborate and add my value, whatever that value is. But now I have time to think about the value, or I can do it when I feel my best. To deliver that, versus that idea of forced. Because as you said, we've all sat in situations where we'd rather not be there, or we're half listening and someone says, well, what do you think, Josh? And you're like, oh, I'm sorry, what were you saying? That is because I don't want to be here right now, or I have other things on my mind.
And I didn't realize how big of a deal this was until we built Volley and we started hearing from our users. One of my favorite bits of user feedback was from an engineer who proclaims himself an introvert. And I know a lot of engineers are. I am. Even though I don't present as an introvert, I know I am very much. But he said, you know what? My friends on Snapchat and on WhatsApp, they think I'm funny. They think I'm confident. They have this total different view of me than anyone at work. Everyone at work thinks I'm a recluse. They think I'm this backwards person because I just don't know what to say in a meeting. I don't know what to say on the spot. I have to think about my responses a little bit. Asynchronous tools allow me to do that. But the way the workplace works, Zoom calls, I can't do it. And so therefore I can't really show up. And so that was one of my favorite bits of feedback, because he said, Volley helps me show up in a way that I'm proud, like an extrovert, like someone who has something to say, because we all have something to say. And it's a super important point that extroverts kind of rule the boardroom. They kind of, and we know we've all been part of those meetings. You can't really get a word in. Is that the energy of that person? Like, oh my gosh, you got to really bring it if you want to like outdo that person, that guy, you know, like,
no, and I am too. I am very introverted, and people, when they look at me, they go, how can you be? You go on stage and you speak. And I said, yeah, but I'm in control of that. Or, you know, I was an actor for a while. I was like, they gave me the words to say. That's okay. And even this, it's fine, but it's a time where I go, I like having conversations. Like, I'm better one-on-one. My worst nightmare is going into a room of 100 people and I don't know anyone. Really uncomfortable. Really
Same.
uncomfortable. But if I sat down with one person and we started a conversation, that's great. We can do that. Or even in this framework, I figured out how to be comfortable in this framework after 90 something episodes or 100 episodes, and you go, oh, okay, we can figure this out. So listen, as we wind down here and we wrap up, let me ask you, what's next? Where do you see Volley going? What's your path for this technology?
Well, our goal is to usher in the future of work, like bring it to today. Like that's what we think about all of the time. That's what we're kind of obsessed about, is using this technology to enable that. And like I said, we're just starting to feel the gravity. We're just starting to feel the burn a little bit. Like, is this really how it's going to be? And how do we survive over time? So it's really a lot more of the same for Volley. Just continue to build, world-class communication product that increases connection, reduces meetings, and improves communication for remote teams. And listen very closely to our users and make that happen.
Great. Well, I'm excited. I'm going to bring it to my team and talk to them and say, well, I think we should use this. Because as soon as I saw it, I said, because again, it's this, I just can't get off of it. The more I think about it, is this idea of we attend meetings that are good for half of the people, meaning that it's good for those half because it fits their schedule, their time, and their control.
The way they want to communicate. Yeah,
exactly. Where could we say, could we get rid of 90% of that and allow everyone to participate and collaborate? And then at the end, you might say, all right, we've done all this collaboration. Let's meet together for a final. But a lot of the heavy lifting has been done through these short little volleys versus, by the end of the day, when there's meeting after meeting after meeting, sometimes, I've done it. I'm in a meeting going, what is this meeting about? I forget. Why are we here? What are we trying to accomplish? Because you're burnt out and you can't be focused all the time and bring your best self, as I said. And that's why I love that. I think it disconnects the pace to allow you to be thoughtful. And I think that's a really, really good thing. So
I'm writing that down. That's good. Glenn, you're going to become our pitch man. All right.
Listen, I'll pitch. I'm good. So as we wrap up here, at the end of every episode, I just ask some random questions just to get to know the people. So
sure.
This is where you can be quick. You don't have to think too hard. We'll ask about 4 or 5 questions, and then we'll let everybody know how to get in touch with you. So first question. I always say everybody's always worried about food and health and all the rest of this, but what's the one food you can't live without?
Protein pancakes.
Protein pancakes.
Yeah. As an eternal fat guy, it's a hack. It's a total hack. They're equal parts egg, cottage cheese, and oats, and you throw them in a blender. And they're delicious. And each pancake, a quarter cup pancake's like 50 calories. So it's just a way that I can maintain, a healthy weight, but still have a feeling of fullness. And it's kind of the perfect macronutrient balance. So that's what comes to mind first. Other than that would be nachos, which very much take me out of balance.
Yes.
They are my favorite food.
They'll definitely take you out. Okay. Where is one place in the world that you would like to travel to that you haven't been to yet?
Oh, that I haven't been to. I just want to go to the South Pacific. I watch Survivor and I just think I gotta go. I gotta get to one of these islands, these places. So
yeah, I always see ones with the thatched huts sitting out in the middle of the water, and I thought, oh, that would be pretty nice.
We got to do that. Yeah.
Okay, so give me something that you're reading or you're listening to that is inspiring you that you would share with other people.
It's just a recent one. It's Hacking Growth by Sean Ellis. Such a good book.
That one again. I've heard that one again.
Yeah.
So I got to write that one down.
It's like the Bible for growth hacking. It's so good, and he's done a great job writing it. Really helped influence our growth strategy.
Okay. Let's see here. We have, if I got all of your friends and family together, close people who know you, and put them in a room, what's the one word they would use to describe you?
One word they would use, or that I would want them to use?
You could have both.
No, I would want them to use loving, because that's what I really am striving to be and become. But they would probably use something dumb like driven, or creative, because I just can't sit still and I've got to always be making, tweaking, building something. Yeah, that's probably
that's
one
great.
of those.
I love that. All right. So last question. We've talked about a lot of different things. If there was one thing that you wanted the listeners to get out of our conversation today, one thing that you think, here's the one thing I hope you got from this, what would it be?
Well, I really think one of the last points that you made is so good. And I'm going to butcher quoting you now. It's just that we attend meetings that are only good for half of us. That's a powerful idea, right? And it's one of those immutable truths. Like you just know when you hear it, like, yep, that is true. Dang it.
Right.
We do that. And because we don't even think we have another option. But now we do. So that's been my favorite idea, like reflected back to me that you said from this. So I'll say that.
Okay, well, great. So, listen, Josh, thank you so much for taking time today. I really appreciate it. So tell people where they can find Volley, and also where can they connect with you if, you'd like to share where you hang out on social media and things like that.
Yeah, well, it's kind of one and the same right now. Go to volleyapp.com and you'll be added to a conversation with me automatically, because why wouldn't a founder take the chance to chat with new users the moment they download the app? So that won't scale. We won't do that for long, but for now, that's it. Or you can find me on LinkedIn like a hobo if you want.
Well, listen, I appreciate it. And, this was a fascinating conversation, and time just flew. And I love those conversations because I really think you're onto something here. This idea of allowing people to have thoughtful conversations at their own pace in terms of collaboration. I think you're onto something here that nobody's been thinking of. Once you listen to it and you think about it, you go, damn, why didn't we do that before?
Yeah.
Right. But listen, those are the greatest ideas, and those are the ones, because they're easy to adopt. After a while, you just go, yeah, well, I can't live without this. It's almost I have a feeling it's going to be one of those things in a few years where people go, I don't know how we ever did work without this whole thing, because it's just going to streamline that. So again, folks, please, I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I had a lot of fun here. Please make sure you go check out Volley. So it's volleyapp.com. I'll put it in the show notes as well. Connect with Josh. Now, as I say, please make sure that you subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, you can jump over to the YouTube channel. You can see us and watch us have our conversation. I appreciate your time. I know there's a lot of places that you can go get content. The fact that you spent some time with Josh and me means the world. Please make sure you share this. There's a lot of people that could use this information. And as I say at the end of every episode, you're in charge, but now Josh gave you a few more tools to help you become more successful, both personally and professionally. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thanks again, Josh. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thanks, Glenn.